The Madman! Here are the Boomsday Druid cards. They're really, really good. This is the class that makes out with the most amount of good cards, I would say. And it's across a variety of decks as well. So let's start off with the Floop's Glorious Gloop. 4 stars. Floop's Glorious Gloop strikes me as really potentially good in 2 different decks. One is going to be a token druid deck, which I've built a sample of in the link below. You're going to be able to create a bunch of stuff, and then Floop's Glorious Gloop will probably be better than Innervate at some point during the game. You might be able to use that to help ramp yourself into Ultimate Infestation, or just be able to play more stuff in a turn. This is one of the few ways that might justify trading in your living mana treants, because they immediately give you mana as well. Whereas sometimes before you would get stuck at a certain mana point. Floop's Glorious Gloop, potentially quite a bit better than the current Innervate. Biology Project, 5 stars. This was in my top 10 cards coming in at number 2. I feel like it's an extremely strong card for a variety of decks of Druid that want to get to the late game. Basically, the way that I picture the symmetry breaking is that most Druid decks are built to take advantage of having 10 mana. So the way to look at it is, if the game started with both sides at 10 mana, wouldn't that be good for Druid? In general, yes. Large reason of which is because of Ultimate Infestation. The Biology Project takes both steps towards that. Some people have wondered, do you play this card against aggro? And I would say it's at its best against aggro. The deck archetype that you have to worry about playing this against is combo, because combo decks might be able to take advantage of the mana perhaps better than you can, since you can ramp. Maybe you don't want to ramp them, but against aggro, absolutely you want both sides to develop more towards your late game. Spreading Plague, Malfurion, Ultimate Infestation. Yeah, you want all that good stuff. Worth noting that for Biology Project, if you're at 10 mana, it's still not useless because it will act as an Innervate. After you spend some mana, you spend 1 mana, and then you gain 2 mana crystals, which means you basically get another mana. Dendrologist, 1 star. Even though 2 mana 2/3 Discover a Spell is pretty good, and even though I do think that there is world for treant decks, because I did rate Mulchmuncher in my top 10, I don't think that Dendrologist is quite good enough to make the cut. I don't see myself playing that many treant cards, and you don't need to play that many treant cards for Mulchmuncher to be good, but you do need to play a lot of small treant cards for Dendrologist to be good, and therein lies the difference. I feel like Dendrologist is going to take too much work to actually activate, and hence will not see play. Landscaping, I'm rating 4 stars, and that's because I feel like Token Druid might run Landscaping in its deck. It's very efficient, 3 mana for 2 2/2s, but also it synergizes very well with Mulchmuncher. It reduces the cost of Mulchmuncher by 2. Flobbidinous Floop is very much talked about as a super legendary that Druid has gotten, and I agree. This is going to be amazing, 5 stars. Flobbidinous Floop is mainly going to be used alongside Malygos in order to get 2 Malygos on the board in some way, shape, or form. Maybe you're using the Twig, and then you get to play Floop Malygos, well, Malygos Floop, into Swipe Moonfire Moonfire, dealing 36 damage. Maybe you've got some other combination, such as playing your Dreampetal Florist to discount Malygos down to 2 mana, and then you play your Malygos Floop, and then Swipe Moonfire Moonfire. Maybe you're playing Malygos on a previous turn, and then you're playing Floop plus Faceless Manipulator or Prince Tal'Daram, and then you're doing Moonfire Moonfire for a lot of damage. There's a lot of different methodologies, and Floop isn't just limited to copying Malygos. There's a few other good cards such as Hadronox, even Serenite Chain Gang is very good. Juicy Psychmelon, 4 stars. Even though this is a sprint that tutors, I don't necessarily think that it is going to see play in Malygos, even though it is going to get the Dreampetal Florist and the Malygos and the Lich King and potentially Tyrantus. I certainly put Juicy Psychmelon as well as all 4 of those cards in the deck. That's incredible value, but it is possible that it is too slow. Maybe you don't want to put Tyrantus in your deck. Maybe you don't want to put Dreampetal Florist in your deck. Tutor for your good cards certainly seems great, but maybe, just maybe, the 7-drop is too slow. Maybe the 10-drop is too slow. Maybe the 4 mana draw 2 cards is too slow then. I don't see it as a 2 of, I see it as a 1 of. I do see yourself putting in, because you're drawing the 7 and the 10 also, might as well put in at least a copy of Dreampetal Florist and a copy of Tyrantus in. The Tyrantus might be a little bit greedy, but current versions of Malygos are already sometimes running it. It's like, I think you should. Worth mentioning is that I think that if there is a solid juicy Psychmelon in every single Malygos deck, and Malygos deck is tier 1, I should rate this 5 stars even if there's only one copy, because this is a card that makes sense as a one-of in your deck. And while there are combinations with Dull Master, I don't think that that's actually good. I think that enters meme status instead. Tending Tauren, 1 star. I see Tending Tauren as a very fair card. 6 mana for 7-8 worth of value with the Treants, or 6 mana for the 3-4 and the +1/+1 effect. But the thing is, Druid can do way more than, you know, arena vanilla type fairness right now. It builds a board and it buffs a board, which means that it's probably meant for token type Druid, but I see that the other cards that you can run in token Druid are just better. The Tending Tauren will probably not actually see play. And there's already some decks of token Druid that run Cenarius, some don't. I feel like Cenarius is a better choice than Tending Tauren. Dreampetal Florist, 4 stars. It's a way to get your Malygos to work without needing the twig, because if you play this card and you manage to successfully hit Malygos with it, Malygos costs 2 mana, which means you can successfully go Malygos, Floop, into Swipe Moonfire, Moonfire. Florist can also hit Floop, which means you can go Malygos, Floop, into Moonfire, Moonfire, though you can't swipe then. But it lets you do some massive combos if you have both that as well as the twig, because then you can go Malygos Floop into Swipe, Moonfire, Moonfire. It gets pretty wild. You can even throw in an Innervate for Prince Tal'Daram if you feel really insane. That would be a total of 70 damage on the high end of the combo you could do. The reason why Dreampetal Florist only gets 4 stars is because, one, it might not see a 2 of because it is tough to actually spend a full 7 mana turn to just set up for stuff. You might get rolled over by aggro in that case, should you really do it when you already have Twig. And I think the tiebreaker here is because there's Juicy Psychmelon fishing you a 7-drop, you probably should put in 1 copy of Florist in your deck. So I do see that this deck of Malygos is probably going to have a copy of Florist and a copy of Juicy Psychmelon. I'm not absolutely sure, but I think that's how it'll go. Gloop Sprayer, 1 star. Gloop Sprayer is just gross overkill. Summoning a copy of each adjacent minion. Faceless Manipulator for 5 mana gets you a copy of a minion, and that's about what you need. I don't see some sort of value deck outclassing the Malygos deck right now, and if you're dreaming about getting 2 copies of Malygos Gloop Sprayed, then you're thinking just a little bit too big, I would say. Gloop Sprayer could work in some sort of big Druid, but I think big Druid would do better not trying to get even more disgustingly ahead, but just try to get ahead first. Snowball cards or get ahead cards aren't bad, but when a card is like this Feast or Famine, it's just a bit too much. Mulchmuncher, 5 stars. It's a card that's being slept on right now because I'm reminded of Corridor Creeper. And originally I wasn't, because I was like, this is really specific. It's just Treants. But what really tipped me over is realizing that Living Mana will usually get you 5 Treants, and Soul of the Forest, when currently played in Token Druids, will generally get you about 5 Treants. So you play any one of those 2 cards, and then you have a 5 mana 8/8 rush, which I'd say is pretty good. But if you play 2 of those cards, then you're getting a 0 mana 8/8 rush, and it doesn't even have to be in your hand. I think that's going to adjust the token deck to put in Living Mana, and I think you'll put in Mulchmuncher also. So Druid is probably the class that has the most interesting set of cards out, because it bolsters the already good Malygos Druid, bolsters the already good Token Druid with a different option. I'm not entirely sure whether or not Mulchmuncher and Landscaping will make it into that deck, but I think so. And it provides options for the Malygos Druid. Maybe you do want to play Dreampetal Florist, maybe you do want to play Juicy Psychmelon. I think there's going to be 2 lines of thought. We'll see which line prevails. And pretty much every late game Druid is getting the awesome Biology Project. But don't worry, I don't think it'll necessarily become Druidstone. I think there are very sufficient answers for all those decks